Welcome back to the real story. Peace. It's an elusive and sometimes mysterious thing, but something certainly worth chasing. And that's exactly what the Trump administration is doing right now. From settling disputes between India and Pakistan, to resolving conflicts between Cambodia and Thailand, to creating a more harmonious relationship between the people of Armenia and Azerbaijan after decades of disunity. The Trump administration is making the world more peaceful. And given the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, brokered by President Trump and others, there's a whole lot of new hope for peace between Russia and Ukraine. On that note, it's been more than 1,300 long days since that war erupted, and the fight rages on. Russian forces are pushing forward in eastern Ukraine, having captured nearly 1,400 square miles of territory this year alone, using small unit tactics and glide bombs. But these gains have been costly, with Ukrainian estimates suggesting that over 280,000 Russian casualties have unfolded in 2025 alone. Now, Ukraine is also hitting back, targeting Russian energy infrastructure with drone strikes. In fact, a recent attack on a major oil terminal in Crimea has reportedly disrupted nearly all of Russia's refining capacity, causing fuel shortages and price spikes in some parts of the country. So all told, both sides are intensifying strikes on power grids, leaving thousands of people to face a harsh winter ahead. Now enter into the picture Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War. In a statement on Wednesday, Secretary Hegseth warned that the U.S. and its allies will impose significant costs on Russia if the war in Ukraine doesn't end, signaling a firm commitment to Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. Now, speaking of Zelensky, a figure who's no stranger to controversy, he's scheduled to meet with President Trump at the White House on Friday to discuss a possible weapons shipment to Kyiv, specifically regarding long-range Tomahawk missiles. Now, an unnamed White House official confirmed the meeting will take place, as did Zelensky himself in an X post on Monday. Now, what exactly will come of that meeting remains to be seen, but it comes at a pivotal moment, to say the least. Now, here with reaction is Davis Younts, a military veteran and military defense attorney, and also Jeff Gilson, a lawyer, constitutional scholar, and former speechwriter for British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. Gentlemen, thank you for being here.
Always an honor.
Thank you for having us.
So I want to start with you, Davis, and then I'll go to you, Jeff, because there's two different elements here to making peace. There's the military aspect, and then there's the political and diplomatic aspect. So Davis, regarding what's going on militarily, what do you think it's going to take to finally make peace between Russia and Ukraine?
You know, this has become an increasingly difficult question as this war rages on, as the toll on life and infrastructure continues to remain high. We continue to have concerns. What is it going to take to bring both sides to the table in a meaningful way? But what you're seeing is a strategic element. You're seeing the Trump administration waging what feels like a high stakes game of poker, in that they're using now these Tomahawk cruise missiles. These can be used as offensive weapons. They can essentially be used to target Moscow from inside Ukraine. So the idea that there's even discussion of the United States providing these weapon systems to the Ukraine is a significant attempt to bring Russia to the table and make reasonable concessions so this can move forward. And again, that's been a moving target throughout this process. There's been a lot of complicating factors outside of President Trump or America's control, but this is a significant warning. Trump holds the cards in this game, but this is a significant warning to Russia if they don't come to the table in good faith.
Absolutely. So to follow up then, what do you think is the logic behind even considering sending more weapons to Kyiv? Do you think, as you just said, it's really about trying to bring Russia back to the negotiating table? Or do you think there are some people in Washington who really think that there's a chance of Ukraine defeating Russia on the battlefield militarily?
I believe this is about putting Russia in a position where they have to come back to the bargaining table and negotiate in good faith.
Understood. Now, Jeff, for the political aspect of this equation, I have a couple of questions for you. Number one, what do you make of Vladimir Putin in terms of his moves, his rhetoric, his behavior, and what do you think his end goal here is in Ukraine?
Well, I would say this is Putin. Putin is really brutal. He's a dictator. He has to be. Russia is an extremely large country to be able to govern. But the thing I think that people are missing is that Trump has worked out that he plays people. Trump is not a diplomat. He isn't interested in sociology. He is not interested in ideology or history or even what's going on the battlefield. He plays people. He's a deal maker. He uses leverage, he uses threats, and he uses a lot of public gestures. And in many ways, Putin is exactly the same. Putin knows what he can and he can't do, and he's a realist. And I think that what we're going to see over the next few months, to keep a lookout for it, is what is less about what's happening on the battlefield and more what's about happening in the personal relationship between Putin, Trump, and Zelensky. And I think Trump will gain from what happened in Gaza because he's now confident that those personal relationships can make things work when other factors aren't making them work.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot that can be learned from what we're seeing in Gaza, and I really do hope and pray that ceasefire holds. It's very new still, and there's been some challenges to it, certainly. However, I want to follow up with you, Jeff, for a moment. President Trump seems to have a very interesting relationship with Vladimir Zelensky, who has been to the White House. So I believe this will be time number 3 this year. What are your thoughts about Zelensky, and what do you expect to see from that meeting tomorrow?
Well, Zelensky is almost the reverse of Putin. Putin is a serious, brutal dictator who has a sense of humor, which I think Trump will lean on. I think we saw that in Anchorage. Putin was much more likely to work with Trump when the two of them were together. Zelensky is the reverse. Zelensky is a former professional comedian who has actually proven to be much tougher and much more serious than people give him credit for, notwithstanding his sartorial taste. However, and I'd be interested to hear what Davis has to say about this. I think Davis is right in one regard. I think the Tomahawks are a threat. I think we are very, very unlikely ever to see Tomahawk missiles on land in Ukraine. I think it's a threat. The one thing about transactional deal making is you cannot let someone walk away with nothing. The template for this deal was done in Anchorage. Trump then left them alone to carry on, which was silly because the children, when left alone, started goofing off. So now he's going to come back and put them back in the room and say, no, Putin, you're not going to get more money, more land than we were talking about. Zelensky, you're not going to get more security guarantees. And he will be told that on Friday. Whatever form of words may come out of the meeting on Friday, they will be more threat than reality. We're not, again, I would love to hear what Davis has to say about this, but I don't think we will ever see Tomahawk cruise missiles in the Ukraine because I think it would be an end to any peace negotiations because Putin's military would not allow Putin to agree to it.
That's interesting. Davis, I'd love to hear your thoughts about that as well.
Yeah, I tend to agree. If Tomahawk missiles were placed there, particularly if there were U.S. personnel with those missiles, operating those missiles, that would be a huge escalation, which is not something anyone wants, nor is it something Trump wants. And I think just to pivot on that point that Jeff was making, the other rhetoric we're hearing from Trump is about territorial concessions and really less land for Putin. So obviously, Trump is the great negotiator. He is the great deal maker. He has the force of personality when he's in the room with these individuals to make things happen. That didn't happen once he was no longer in the room. So there's still all of this back and forth. There are people financially and otherwise that benefit from the evil of this war. So it feels like it has to have a very, very strong hand from Trump in order to get this across. I don't want to see, nor do I think we might actually see these Tomahawk cruise missiles, but it is a significant threat, and it, I hope, does meaningfully bring Putin back to the bargaining table.
I completely agree with that. I want peace at this point. We're talking about the largest war to hit Europe since World War II, thousands of people displaced from their homes, widespread destruction to infrastructure, entire towns and cities just reduced to rubble, similar to what we saw in Gaza. So I'm hoping and praying for peace. But in that spirit, Jeff, I have one final question for you, because I think it's important to the peace-building process in Eastern Europe here. Why do you think this war erupted in the first place? Was this truly just unprovoked aggression? Does it speak to Putin's ambitions in Europe? Or was this maybe about NATO expansion? What do you think
Well,
it is?
Riley, I'm going to do that thing that guests aren't supposed to do. I'm not going to answer that question. And I think Davis will understand this. You are talking about 100 or more years of history here. You're talking about the events of 2014 and 22 and the Budapest Memorandum and the supposed guarantees that were given in 1990. I will say this. I don't think there are any angels here. Putin should not have invaded in 2022, but there were many other things going on. What's much more important now is that we get peace. And peace is going to require that both sides have give concessions, because otherwise you cannot have a party who gets nothing. But I will predict this. I'll go out on a limb, and Davis, I'm not expecting you to respond because I'm going way out on a limb, all on my own here. Trump is into grand gestures. I think he's going to become very irritated in the next 2 weeks, nothing more than that, if he can't see Gaza repeated in Ukraine. Look for two things. Look for him to do a trade deal with India at whatever cost to stop India buying oil and gas from Putin, to put pressure on him. And secondly, expect him to get onto Air Force One and make a trip with not much notice to Ukraine and to Russia. And I expect that when he gets to Ukraine, he will put Zelensky on the plane and go to Moscow and dare Putin not to come out to the plane and negotiate. That would be a classic grand Trump gesture. And if I'm right, then I'll come back on your show and you can pat me on the back.
You know what? That's really interesting. Davis, for you then, final thoughts about that?
I think we will see a grand gesture. I don't know if it'll play out just like that, but I think Trump will use every tool, military, diplomatic, and economic, to bring this to a conclusion and to ensure everyone involved, he is willing to go as far as it takes to bring meaningful peace to this region.
Okay. Only time will tell, but gentlemen, thank you for your time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So at a very young age, I was 8 years old, and my parents were involved in a lawsuit against the state of Pennsylvania with the Homeschool Legal Defense Association. That had an impact on me, being involved in that, understanding that. So I took that forward and had an interest in the law that I've carried with me. I took an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. So every military member does that. So if the military members' rights are not protected, they're not protected for the rest of society. These are the individuals that are actually willing to risk their lives to fight for the Constitution and to protect society.
Is this: if you are a Christian, you need to understand that part of your Christian walk, part of your faith journey, is that God is going to call you for a moment. There will be a phone call that comes for you. And I ask you this: are you willing? Will you be willing when that phone call came? I praise God that I was willing to answer that call. It's why I'm here today. It's why I met some of the great men that are here, the people that are here.
So it's left to men like Davis Younts to fight for these Navy SEALs.
Yeah, so I was in law school when 9/11 happened, so I was a true believer back then. So I joined the Air Force, applied to the JAG Corps.
With Reaction is Davis Younts, a military defense attorney with Younts Law. Davis, thank you for being here today.
Riley, it's always an honor to join you.
Davis Younts has been instrumental in defending service members that they tried to kick out of the military for not taking that poison.
Why are the politicians in Iowa allowing it?
Fear. They're afraid to take a stand, and they're afraid to challenge this.
If you're a Christian, your sovereign king, the king of the universe, has already given you an order. Your king has made a call to go into all the world and make disciples. The only question for us is, will we answer it?